I'm here as the messenger, just asking what they wanted to know. So
Okay.
here we are. So these are their questions, and we'll just start at the top. So the first question is, why did you decide in your early days to go with a smaller bank as opposed to going with a larger company after graduating from school?
I really didn't have a choice at that point in time, and I wasn't looking necessarily for a small company versus a large company. It just happened that I ended up interviewing with a small bank, and they hired me because of certain, at least educational expertise that I had.
All right, so
That's pretty much it.
It was the best option at the time. There was
Right.
no like planning or strategy behind it or
Right.
anything like that.
I have an accounting degree, and so when I finished college, or while I was in my senior year, we had interviews with the big CPA firms, the Big 8 firms as they called it back then, and unfortunately I must not have met any of their criteria, so that's probably why I ended up in a smaller company.
All right, fantastic. Why do you think that starting with a smaller bank is better to move up the corporate chain than starting with a large company?
I don't really think so. I think that it depends on what your goals are by the time it's over. If you have a vision of getting into this business or in any business, and you feel that small business is the way to go, then obviously you're going to skew your career path towards that. But I don't necessarily believe that going to work for a small bank or a small company where you can learn everything is going to be advantageous for you if your goals are to go to work for a big company, and certainly vice versa. The big companies typically have silos, and you learn a whole lot about one specific, and it's very difficult to transition that into a small company. So I think it just depends on what you want.
And what your goals are and
Right.
where you want to end up.
Right.
Fantastic. Now this is a big question. This is one of the questions that I had. In 4 years, you graduated from graduate to president. You went that fast. How were you able to make that move so fast?
Well, first of all, I was in the right place at the right time, and that sounds awkward. I'll explain that in a minute.
Okay.
But I also had the proper skill set for what was required of the job. The first bank presidency that I had was a bank with a lending limit of $60,000. It was a $2 million community bank in a small town of 4,000 people. So when you think of a bank in Phoenix, it's obviously quite a bit different footprint than why I was brought on board. I was brought on board to basically clean up the operational and accounting aspects of this small bank, with the assurance from the ownership that they would educate me on the lending side of the business. So it was a perfect opportunity. Talk about the perfect storm. I just happened to be at the right place at the right time, and it worked out beautifully.
Did it scare you a little bit at first?
It's intimidating as heck. But I worked for a great guy at the time, and we worked a lot of hours. But it was he was patient enough, and I felt I worked hard enough to get through that, and we were off and running within probably about 8 months. It was a great opportunity.
All right, fantastic. How much did your formal education facilitate your quick move?
Actually, it was vital, because the accounting was the functional part of what they needed. And I'm not a CPA, but I know my way around tax accounting. I know my way around, the functional, what we might call bookkeeping type accounting. And so when it came to doing the reports that were required for the bank in those days, it was an easy fit for me. So it really was a key element. If I'd have had an economics degree or a marketing degree, frankly, I wouldn't have had the opportunity.
Okay, and then once you got in the industry, you learned the rest of the business.
Exactly.
On the job, training.
Right. I did, and I had great bosses that allowed me to do that, and I realized that my personality was probably better fit for business development than it was for accounting, and so things kind of happened from there.
All right. Well, it sounds like fortune smiled upon you.
I was very, very, very,
great.
very blessed, yes.
You mentioned that as a young bank president, you had to earn the right to be part of the community scene. Specifically, what did you have to do in order to accomplish this?
It was really a twofold effort. When we first moved to Arizona, I was 28 years old and was running it was brought down here to run a small bank for an ownership group out of Omaha. And it was a difficult task because of the fact that I had no connections. And so the decision that was made, that I made, was I isolated my board, and I told the board members, I need to get involved, so point me in the right direction. And so while I was trying to get my arms around the staffing and the customers and everything else that goes on in the bank itself, I was also trying to get my arms around where I should be in the community and how I should position myself. And it really did. At 28 years old, it took me probably 3 years to really get where I felt I needed to be so that people were coming to me. Because I heard it a lot from the old timers. You know, you young whippersnapper, you know, and blah, blah, this, and my banker's 60 years old. Why do I want to talk to you? And it took some time, but it happened.
It was a big deal.
It was a big deal. It was very frustrating. You know, and I used to call my boss in Omaha. He'd say, how's it going? I said, well, trying to open some doors, but it's a little bit tough.
Yeah. Pleasant problem to have to deal with, though. I think a lot of people would say, you know, that much success early on,
right?
To be, you know, so young that's a problem,
right.
You know.
But it made me
kind of
impatient.
interesting.
It made me driven, but it also made me impatient. Things were happening fast, and I expected them to keep happening fast, and sometimes they weren't.
When you first started in the financial industry and had no outside support other than your immediate family, what strength did you rely on most for your success?
And I'm sorry they took out immediate family, because that, you know, but really my wife, because my youngest was only 4 months old, but my wife gave me the strength to keep moving. But I'm a very persistent, driven person, and I feel like the fact that I was willing to work and prepare myself for what I perceived to be the challenges before me, I think that made all the difference in the world. I'm not afraid. If anybody thinks, especially the youngsters coming up, if they think they can put in an 8-to-5 job and be ready for the next challenge, it isn't going to work. You know that. You're doing it now. So it doesn't work.
So it's putting in that extra effort beyond what's required.
Right. And it's not necessarily sitting at the office, as you know. It could be out going to community dinners and being involved in activities within the community, but it is not an 8-to-5 effort if you want to get to the next step.
What are some of the keys to continually achieving leadership roles as you've done in various banks and organizations?
I'm a big fan of preparation. I always tell my kids, I've taken that old phrase and turned it around into preparation creates opportunities, and I believe that. I always felt that if I was going to